The sun dipped low over Lagos, casting a golden hue over the bustling streets that throbbed with life. Amid the cacophony of honking cars, street hawkers' cries, and the distant thrum of Yoruba drums mingling with Afrobeat music, a small weathered figure moved slowly along the crowded pavement. Mama Ayo, a poor black old woman, shuffled with careful steps, her worn sandals scraping against the uneven concrete littered with scraps of paper and fallen leaves. Her faded wrapper and tattered blouse, dulled by years of relentless sun and rain, spoke of decades filled with hardship and survival. The scent of spicy jollof rice and fried plantains wafted irresistibly through the air from nearby restaurants, teasing her senses with their rich, smoky aroma. The chatter of diners mingled with the clatter of plates and the occasional burst of laughter, creating a lively yet intimidating atmosphere. Mama Ayo's tired eyes scanned the busy street, filled with a mix of fatigue and quiet resolve. She approached a popular local restaurant, its bright fluorescent lights promising warmth and sustenance, but also uncertainty and potential rejection. Tonight she needed food, not just any food, but leftover food, something discarded yet nourishing enough to fill her aching stomach. The humid Lagos air clung to her skin, thick with the mingled smells of exhaust fumes and cooking spices, as she hesitated at the threshold, heart heavy but hopeful. Mama Ayo's days were a humble cycle of struggle and survival, marked by the relentless rhythm of poverty. Widowhood had left her alone in a cramped, dimly lit room at the city's edge, where peeling paint curled away like dead leaves and cracked windows rattled in the occasional breeze, mirroring the fragility of her weathered spirit. Once a vibrant market trader, known for her sharp wit and generous heart, age and misfortune had pushed her out of the bustling stalls and into the shadows of neglect. Her small pension barely covered the rent of her tiny room and the water bills. Food was a luxury she often could not afford, leaving her stomach gnawing with hunger more nights than not. Each morning, she walked miles to collect water from a distant communal tap, the heavy jerrycan tugging at her aching back. And afternoons were spent begging or doing small chores for neighbors who sometimes treated her with kindness, sometimes with indifference. Yet beneath her frailty lay a fierce pride and a heart full of stories, tales of laughter and loss, of love and resilience. Friends long gone, children scattered across the country and abroad, Mama Ayo clung to memories like lifelines in a stormy sea. The leftover food she sought wasn't just about filling her empty stomach. It was a desperate hope to reclaim dignity in a world that had forgotten her name and face. That evening, Mama Ayo entered the restaurant, the sudden cool blast of air conditioning brushing her sunburnt skin like a brief reprieve from the heat outside. The smell of rich, spicy pepper soup filled the room, mingling with laughter, light conversation, and the soft clinking of glasses and cutlery. She hesitated near the door, clutching a faded cloth bag close to her chest, her fingers trembling slightly with nervousness. When a waiter glanced her way with a brief, calculating look, she swallowed her pride and asked softly, voice barely above a whisper, "Please, sir, do you have any leftover food? I cannot afford to buy, but I am hungry." The waiter's eyes narrowed, and the restaurant's hum seemed to falter momentarily. Nearby diners turned their heads, whispers rippling like a wave through the crowded room. "Leftovers? We don't serve scraps here," the waiter snapped, voice sharp and cold as the air conditioning. A flush of humiliation burned through Mama Ayo's cheeks as she stepped back, the weight of their disdain heavier than her empty stomach. The metallic tang of fear and shame mixed with the aromas of cooking, making her feel small and exposed. She fled into the Lagos night, tears blurring the neon signs and the distant hum of traffic, her heart breaking not just from hunger but from rejection. That night, in her dim, sparsely furnished room, Mama Ayo sat on her worn mat, the sting of humiliation fresh and raw in her heart. The leftover food she had dared to request had become a symbol of invisibility, of being cast aside by a world that no longer saw her worth. But beneath the hurt, a spark ignited, a fierce determination not to be forgotten, not to be discarded like refuse. She recalled the old market days vividly, the vibrant colors, the shouts of traders, the smell of fresh produce, and most of all, her voice commanding respect as she bartered and sold, her hands feeding many families. Tomorrow, she vowed silently, she would find another way. The next morning, as the city roared back to life with hawkers hawking their wares and the relentless traffic noise, Mama Ayo felt a resolve steadying her trembling limbs. This wasn't just about food anymore. It was about reclaiming her place in society, her dignity and self-respect. The restaurant's rejection had ignited a fire within her that would not be easily quenched, no matter the obstacles ahead. Mama Ayo began her quest by visiting familiar faces, street vendors and market women who remembered her kindness and generosity from better times. She shared her story quietly, seeking small acts of kindness or leftover meals from those willing to help. Some turned away, wary or too busy to spare anything. Others offered a smile and a small packet of food with genuine warmth. A young vegetable seller named Chidi, noticing her plight, handed her a ripe banana and a sachet of water, his eyes filled with empathy. "Mama, you deserve better," he said softly, his voice steady and sincere. Encouraged by these small but meaningful gestures, Mama Ayo gathered courage to return to the restaurant, not to plead again, but to observe. She watched the staff moving efficiently, the diners chatting and eating, and discreetly the discarded leftovers behind the kitchen door. What she saw sparked a new plan, one that would challenge the unjust walls of pride and prejudice and perhaps change not only her fate but the fate of many others like her. Mama Ayo's return to the restaurant was met with cold stares and curt dismissals. The manager, a stern man in a crisp uniform and polished shoes, warned her to stay away from the premises. "We have rules here," he said, voice like steel, hard and uncompromising. "No begging, no scavenging." The kitchen staff busied themselves, eyes averted and faces tight with discomfort. Yet in the back alley, Mama Ayo discovered a hidden truth, piles of uneaten food, left untouched and destined for the trash. The smell of rich stews, fried meats, and fresh bread lingered heavily in the air, wasted and forgotten. Her heart ached deeply at the injustice. Food abundant and plentiful, yet hunger prevailed just outside the restaurant walls. The glaring inequality of the city was mirrored in every discarded morsel. The obstacles were many and daunting, but Mama Ayo's resolve grew stronger with each passing moment. She would not be silenced nor shamed again. Change, she knew now, required not just hope, but courage and cunning. One humid afternoon, as Mama Ayo sat near the restaurant's back gate, a young woman approached cautiously. Ada, a waitress with kind eyes that shone with empathy and a restless spirit longing for change, had noticed Mama Ayo's plight over the weeks. "You shouldn't have to beg for scraps," Ada whispered gently, glancing around nervously. "I've seen the waste. Maybe we can do something together." Their conversations grew frequent and intimate, sharing stories of hardship and hope, laughter and tears. Ada's insider knowledge of the restaurant's operations and Mama Ayo's determination formed a fragile but promising alliance. Together they dreamed of a simple yet powerful act, collecting leftover food to feed the hungry without shame or stigma. Ada's empathy bridged the gap between two worlds, and Mama Ayo found in her a spark of the community she'd lost long ago. Through this unexpected friendship, the seeds of change were sown, fragile yet promising, ready to grow. Mama Ayo's days no longer passed in silent suffering. With Ada's help, she gained a new confidence, learning to speak out against the indifference and cruelty she faced daily. She learned to navigate the restaurant's rigid rules, gently negotiating with staff and management for leftover meals to be saved and shared with those in need. The process was slow and fraught with setbacks, but each small victory rekindled her spirit and warmed her heart. She rediscovered a voice she thought lost, one that demanded dignity and respect for all. Her wrinkles deepened not just from age and hardship, but from newfound strength and resilience. The city's harshness had battered her, but vulnerability became her armor, a source of power rather than weakness. In the eyes of those she helped, Mama Ayo was no longer invisible. She was a beacon of resilience and hope, a living testament to courage. Despite the progress made, tensions mounted steadily. The restaurant's owner, alarmed by growing complaints from some patrons and the informal food sharing, threatened to shut down the program. "This is a business, not charity," he growled loudly in the kitchen. Staff whispered behind closed doors about Mama Ayo and Ada, branding them troublemakers and risks to the establishment's reputation. One evening, as Mama Ayo waited for her usual collection of food, a group of diners jeered openly, mocking her presence with cruel laughter and pointed fingers. The humiliation cut deep, threatening to undo the courage she had painstakingly built. But instead of retreating, Mama Ayo stood taller, her eyes shining with quiet defiance and an unyielding spirit. The crisis forced her to confront the harsh realities of prejudice and injustice head-on. The battle for dignity was no longer a private struggle. It was becoming a public fight demanding attention and change. News of Mama Ayo's struggle spread beyond the restaurant's walls and into the wider community. Local shopkeepers, neighbors, and even some diners began to question their assumptions about the poor and elderly, their hearts stirred by the courage of one woman. A nearby church offered to help organize regular meals, and a small crowd gathered to support Mama Ayo's cause, bringing donations and moral support. The restaurant reluctantly agreed to allow a trial period for leftover food distribution, carefully monitored by Ada and Mama Ayo. The city's air seemed charged with change, the scent of cooking mingling with the fresh hope of justice. Yet a backlash lingered. Some patrons boycotted the establishment, and staff morale wavered under the strain. Mama Ayo felt the weight of leadership heavy on her aging shoulders, knowing that every step forward carried the risk of falling back. The fight was far from over, but the first cracks in the walls of indifference had appeared, promising a new dawn. As the final confrontation loomed on the horizon, Mama Ayo prepared herself with quiet determination. She rehearsed her words carefully, steadying her breath in the small, cracked mirror above her bed, where the faint glow of a single candle flickered. The old wrapper she wore was patched but clean, a symbol of the dignity she refused to lose despite all odds. Ada stood by her side, offering quiet encouragement and the steady presence of friendship. Together, they planned to meet the restaurant's owner at a community meeting, aiming to secure a permanent arrangement for leftover food distribution that would benefit many. Mama Ayo's heart pounded with a mix of fear, hope, and fierce determination. This moment was more than about food. It was about respect, visibility, and justice for the forgotten. The city outside buzzed with life and noise, but inside her small room, a fierce hope burned bright and unwavering. In the crowded, noisy community hall, voices clashed and emotions ran high as the meeting began. The restaurant's owner argued fiercely for profits and strict rules, while Mama Ayo spoke with calm, unwavering conviction that commanded attention. "I am not asking for charity," she said firmly, eyes meeting his with steady courage. "I ask for dignity, for respect for all who hunger, regardless of their place in society." Ada stood beside her, presenting heartfelt stories of those helped by their efforts, the faces of children and elders who had found relief. The room fell into a heavy silence, the tension palpable and thick. Then, a local council member stepped forward, endorsing the initiative and urging compromise for the good of the community. Slowly, the owner's resolve softened, his shoulders sagging with reluctant acceptance. The power of truth, courage, and community had shifted the balance. Mama Ayo's voice, once drowned in shame and silence, now echoed with strength and the promise of change. With the community's support firmly behind her, the restaurant established a formal program to donate leftover food to those in need. Mama Ayo became its proud ambassador, her face radiant with newfound respect and joy. The once dismissive staff now greeted her warmly, and diners shared smiles instead of sneers when they saw her entering. The old woman who had been humiliated for simply asking became a symbol of perseverance and hope throughout the neighborhood. The city's familiar smells, the rich spices, the sweet fried plantains and smoky grilled meats now carried a taste of justice and compassion. Mama Ayo's tiny room felt brighter, the air lighter, and her heart fuller than it had in years. She knew the journey ahead remained long and filled with challenges, but the path was clear and hopeful. Through courage and compassion, dignity could be reclaimed, one meal at a time. Months later, Mama Ayo stood outside the restaurant, watching children and elders alike receive warm meals with gratitude and smiles. The leftover food that once symbolized shame had transformed into a precious lifeline for many. Ada joined her, smiling softly as they shared a simple meal together beneath the fading orange glow of the setting sun. The city's noise faded into a comforting backdrop, a constant reminder of life's persistence. Mama Ayo's story inspired others to see beyond poverty and age, embracing humanity in all its fragile and beautiful forms. The wrapper she wore fluttered gently in the evening breeze, a symbol of resilience, patched with hope and courage. In the heart of Lagos, an old woman's quiet bravery had sparked a movement, proving that even in the face of humiliation, dignity could rise, stronger and brighter than before.